Welcome to It's All Geek to Me, a podcast where two friends experience popular nerdy franchises for the first time. My name is Leah, and this season, my co-host Kelly will be watching my favorite films, The Lord of the Rings, for the very first time, and I'm the expert. Let's dive in.
We are back, and we are officially exactly 50 minutes in.
This section ended on 50 minutes on the dot, which is cool.
I'm pretty sure we were mid-scene, which I think that's the first time we've done that, right?
Yeah, typically when we end sections, we'll end up seeing another group of characters when we pop back in for the next episode. But here I thought this was a nice button to end this section on, and then we'll see the preparations for what's next.
Yeah, a good final phrase to say, but we won't spoil that. Let's start from the beginning.
I love how we always reference where we end, and then we're like, well, no spoilers, as if y'all haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, no spoilers of this episode. Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so we begin around the 26-minute mark where the elves are going through the forest, and we finally see Arwen, who I wrote down my girl, although it's funny Arwen. Because I was not attached to her until Eowyn came into the picture, and now I'm very attached to Arwen specifically. Yeah. So she is going with the elves. They are presumably heading to the Immortal Lands.
Undying Lands. Close, though.
Undying Lands. Same thing. I mean, immortals aren't dying either.
Yes.
So she sees kind of a slow-mo. Like, we start slowing down. She sees a kid running through the forest, and he runs into what I at first thought was like a little fantasy. Actually, originally, I thought it was a flashback, and then I thought it was a fantasy, and then I saw that it was actually potentially real, like the future.
Yeah.
So she sees this kid. He's running up to Aragorn, and Aragorn's picking him up, and it's clearly a father-son bond, and Arwen sees that the little kid is wearing her necklace, and she starts tearing up and crying a little bit, and one of the elves is like, Arwen, we gotta go, come on. And then she turns her horse around, and I'm over here cheering because yes, I'm so happy.
Go get your man.
She goes back to her father. I don't think she said his name, but I'm pretty sure it's Elrond, right?
Yeah,
because I remember it being suspiciously close to Elmer.
Why would she call him Elrond? His name is Dad.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
She calls him Ada, which I think is dad in
Elvish.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember his name is suspiciously close to Elmer, which is a very human name. So I just don't think that would be a very good name for an elf, but I also don't really think Elrond. It's just very close to being Elmer and Ron, which are both very human names to me, but that's neither here nor there. Also, I finally remembered that Gandalf's horse's name was Shadowfax, which I thought was so hilarious.
Yeah, you were like dying in that episode.
Yeah, because it's just so like, why would you name your horse Shadowfax if he's like pure white? Yeah, Shadowfax sounds like a cool black horse name, but a white horse, like call him Ghost or something.
Ooh, that'd be good.
That would have been a cool name. But anyway.
Like in Game of Thrones, the white wolf's name is Ghost.
Oh yeah, I actually totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's a cool white animal name.
Yeah.
Like if it's got white fur, I'm calling it Ghost.
Yes,
so
like
she goes to Elrond and she's confronting him. And she's like, tell me what you saw. I know you can see the future. What did you see? And he's like, I only saw death for you. And she's like, no, but you didn't tell me that you also saw life. You saw my son. Which if I were to cry, I feel like this is kind of the moment. But I didn't. I just thought it was like just really powerful. Yeah. Basically, she saw a glimpse into her future. And Elrond's like, it's not set in stone. This future is fading away right now. And Elrond's like, it's not set in stone. This future is fading away right now. And basically Arwen says, if I leave him right now, I'm going to regret it forever.
Forever. I feel like words like forever or literally. When people say words like that, they're typically being a little bit dramatic. Like forever, it's not forever. But for her,
it's literally forever.
It's legitimately forever.
Which is ironic because you just said both literally and forever. And I'm just here throwing it out.
Typically when those words are used, they don't hold the weight of what they really mean. But in this situation, it does hold the weight of forever. And I love that line.
Yeah. This is a total side note, but it's so funny you bring that up because I always think about that with the word awesome. People always say the word awesome. And when you think about the word, like it literally means awe-inspiring, you know? So whenever I talk about something being like huge and like bigger than us, that kind of thing, I always say awesome. And then people are like, okay. And I'm like, no, I mean like literally awesome.
You know, it's funny. In one of the earlier episodes, you used the word awesome and then you explained it and you said it inspired awe, but I cut that part out and I only had you saying awesome and I didn't have the awe-inspiring.
Oh no. So anybody who's listening right now and making fun of me in their heads for saying awesome, that's what I meant. I actually try not to use the word awesome. I know it doesn't really matter, but I try to save that word for when I genuinely think something is awe-inspiring.
Yeah, when you genuinely mean it. Sidetrack, back to the film.
Such is the nature of our podcast. I don't really understand fully. Well, there's a few things you're going to have to explain to me, but there was one thing I wasn't sure if this was like a ritual or if she was like sharing a prophecy or something, but Arwen was saying this whole stuff about like, well, I actually didn't write it down, so you're going to have to refresh my memory on that. But she was saying something, she was like going over to a statue and she was looking and she was like, oh, only it sounded like a prophecy.
This scene was very interesting because you were getting a flash forward. So her doing what you're calling a ritual was a flash forward to kind of what she does after this scene, because then when we cut back to her and Elrond, she tells him, reforge the sword. So that's what she was doing. She was getting the sword that was broken when Sauron died initially.
Because then we had this moment where she's like holding a book and then she drops it and Elrond's like, oh, your hands are cold. And then he says, the life of Eldar is leaving you, which also Eldar is kind of funny. I don't know why. It sounds a lot like Beldar from the Coneheads, which is why I'm like, this is not.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know the Coneheads? Oh my gosh.
I've never even heard of that.
Are you serious? It was before our time, but I have older siblings.
Coneheads. Next on It's All Geek to Me.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine if we watch it? People would flip out.
I literally don't know what it is, so I couldn't imagine. I actually, truly, literally couldn't imagine.
It is an awesome movie. Just kidding. I actually don't remember it at all. I just remember they had like cone heads. That's all
Makes
I remember. But anyway, so my question here is, I thought that maybe she was doing a ritual. Did she become mortal in that moment because the life was leaving her?
So this is a moment I actually feel as though I have researched a lot and I have to constantly look up and remember what is happening here. But yes, essentially that is what I remember from the research I've done, is that in that moment, her choice has been made. And she even says it later. She says, it doesn't even matter because the ship is gone. I can't go. I'm stuck here. So peace out, Eldar. I'm mortal now.
Oof. Okay, so then Elrond reforges the sword. Well, he doesn't actually do it, but there are some other guys that do it. And dudes. Elrond's just watching. He's being a supervisor. And I just wrote down, OMG, yes. The music is just getting me hyped up. I'm so ready. I'm ready for Arwen to go get her love and be happy. And that's it. That's all I need.
Yes, I'm glad she's staying for sure.
I'm here for the romance. I'm here for it. I love love. I love romance. I was so hyped when they kissed. And then I was a little disappointed because you were like, this isn't a rom-com, but I'm feeling rom-com vibes.
But we do have elements of romance, you know?
Could be, you never know. Well, we had that whole thing between Smeagol and Deagle, which felt a little bit like a rom-com until he murdered him. Anyway, so then we got Gandalf and Shadowfax on the move. We got Pippin sleeping, and he is just looking adorable while he sleeps. And Gandalf lets him know that they are in Gondor, and they're headed to, I don't think they actually said it, but I wrote that they were headed to the White City. Yes. Is that what it's called?
So it's called Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith means City of Kings. Minas, I believe, means city. Tirith means kings. Because later we go to Minas Morgul, which is the dead city. So I think Minas means city.
Ooh, I didn't catch that.
I caught this. For the first time, I was like, wait a second. Do I know what this word means in this language I don't even know? New. I don't even know what language it is. But my assumption now is Minas means city. But yes, the White City is another name that it's called by because it is white.
Yes, it is. All the buildings are white. So So at first I was a little confused because the buildings looked the same as the city that was under siege with Faramir in the last film. But now I'm pretty sure it wasn't because we see Faramir a little bit later.
It's a different city. And in this section too, they say it. So that city is Osgiliath, and it is the last stop between the enemy and Minas Tirith. So if Osgiliath falls.
Okay. I actually wrote that down, but I wrote down that I needed you to explain that. So when we get to that part, you've got some splaining to do.
Splaining. Okay, fine.
So I wrote down, there's that awkward tree because that tree does look out of place. But I also wrote down 100% chance that at the end of this movie, when the king returns, that tree is gonna bloom. I already know it. I know enough about films to know that awkward dead tree is gonna bloom. So mark my words. If it doesn't bloom, I'll give my film degree back, okay?
This is a true Kelly Marissa prediction. Write it down in the books. That tree will bloom if the king returns.
We know it's going to happen. It's called Return of the King. And by the way, Gandalf does say Return of the King again. And I was like, yes. I always get hyped when I hear the name of the movie in the movie.
I know, I do too.
Anyway, so they're going up to the steward, which I was so hyped to find out his name. But before we get to his name, Gandalf is telling Pippin what not to say. And he's like, don't talk about Boromir. Also, don't talk about Frodo. And also, don't talk about Aragorn. Actually, just like don't
say anything
talk at all if you can help it. Which I thought was just a great moment. So now we meet the steward, and let me tell you, my heart is broken. I was so hoping that his name would just be like Closeamir, Shortamir, Talamir, just like something good. But no, his name is Denithor.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? That's the most boring name.
Also, he sucks.
I wrote down many times that he is a butthead. I actually wrote down a worse word than that, but we are PG-13.
PG-13.
So very disappointing name and a disappointing guy. And he is immediately annoyed. And Gandalf is like, oh, I come with news. And Denethor is like, oh, is your news that my son is dead? And he holds up the broken, I don't actually know what it was. Was it a horn?
The Horn of Gondor.
Okay.
This always makes me laugh so much because I'm like, has he just been like sitting there mourning with this horn every single day waiting for someone to show up? And I'm like, honestly, probably, because Denethor is a weirdo. And he probably has just been sitting there waiting and being like, I can't wait for someone to come in and me be like, oh, interesting that my son is dead. Any info on that?
He's been there for weeks. He's just sitting there.
Faramir already knew that he was dead and he's been gone fighting for days.
But have you ever tried doing that in real life? Just like waiting for somebody to come home or notice you being annoyed. And it's just like after 5 seconds, you're just like, I cannot do this.
This is never going to happen. It's never going to work. But he was committed. He's been sitting there with that horn. He's been waiting and his moment has come.
Honestly, I respect him for that because I really can't do that. But Pippin immediately speaks up, breaking the rule that Gandalf gave him. And he's like, oh, he died defending me. And also, I want to swear my fealty to you or something like that. And Gandalf, like a jerk, is like, oh, get up, and just hits him with his staff. And I was like, dude, be nice to him. I don't understand why he's always so rude.
Yeah, but he just made a really big mistake. Like, why would you want to be fighting for this man? He's crazy. Like, you don't want to swear your fealty to Gondor under this rule, sir?
Yeah, it is a bad idea for sure. But then Gandalf was also like pretty mean to Denethor, which I understand why, but he's like, there's no time to mourn. You gotta fight. We gotta call to Rohan. And then Denethor is like, oh, I've seen more than you know. I know who's there in Rohan chillin', and it's Aragorn, and I'm not giving up my power. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just runs in the family, that everyone's just obsessed with their power and they're like refusing to give it up for the rightful king, which is so annoying.
If Aragorn had come to Minas Tirith, he probably would have been imprisoned, honestly. It would have been bad.
Yeah, I believe it. So then Gandalf says, you can't be mad at the return of the king.
The return of the king.
Great moment. And then end of the movie because they said the name.
They said it. That's all we need to know.
And then Pippin is kind of realizing that he made a terrible decision. He's like, I don't want to fight. And Gandalf is like, well, that's your own fault because you swore to this guy, which you really shouldn't have done. And then they're looking out on the balcony and Pippin asks, is there any hope for Frodo and Sam? And Gandalf is like, there wasn't much hope to begin with, only a fool's hope. Which I assume was a kind way of bringing up the fact fact that he keeps calling him a fool of a took.
I have never noticed the significance of that line before until this time.
Really?
Yeah, and I said that was his way of saying, you know, I've been calling you a fool, but truthfully, we're all fools. And I loved that.
Yeah.
And I love that scene.
I think that was a little bit of redemption because Gandalf has really been consistently super mean to Pippin, and I'm starting to think he doesn't really deserve that. But I can see now that he means well. It's just that he's this super old man and he is just used to things going a certain way, and these little hobbits just keep messing stuff up sometimes.
Right, exactly. Frodo was supposed to be the only hobbit there, but it's like, oh, we got to drag Sam along because he was listening, and then they run into these guys and now they're a part of it. So it's not really going to Gandalf's plan, and I also think he's not giving them enough credit for what they're capable of.
Yeah, which brings back what you were saying before, which is that he doesn't have enough trust or faith in them that they're doing what's right, but they're proving themselves over and over again.
They are regarded as children, and I think because they are so small, people see them as children, but they are grown men in their 50s.
Not realizing that they're 50-year-old men.
Exactly.
I'm over here discounting them, thinking that they're mid-20s. No, they're 50. They're 50. Old enough. So then we had a part where I kind of glazed over at the details of this, so that's where I'm going to need you to help me. But basically, Gandalf is explaining who's going to fight for Mordor, and we see all of these like presumably evil humans, and he says this is the end of Gondor as we know it, and then if they take the river, that's a bad thing. So I'm going to need you to go ahead and supply me with all the details of that because I just kind of glazed over it.
Sure. So basically, Sauron is gathering his armies and he has people coming in from the south, and there's all these places that they're coming from. So we did see some ships. So the thing with the ships is if those ships make it to the river and we lose the river, then, you know, we're going to have all of these enemies on Minas Tirith, and Minas Tirith is not going to have the strength to take over what they're sending. And then in addition, the Witch King of Agmar is coming. And I don't know if I'm getting too far ahead because this is a little interspliced with the next scene with Frodo, because Gandalf is talking about the Witch King coming. The Witch King is who stabbed Frodo in the first film.
He's the Lord of the Nazgul, by the way, which would make a great fourth movie name, The Lord of the Nazgul.
Lord of the Nazgul. Get his love story.
Ooh.
So he's coming and he is the strength of the Nazgul, and it is rumored that no man can kill him.
So that's basically the chunk that I just glossed over, but I did pick up on the Witch King of Admar.
He's basically just explaining all the different fronts where enemies are coming from and the fact that these need to be protected. And I think the most important right now is where Faramir is fighting and Osgiliath, and that falling is going to be detrimental to Minas Tirith.
So then, like you said, it's kind of interspliced with the next part, which is when Gollum is taking them to the Dead City, which you said the name is...
Minas Morgul.
Yeah, very cool. And he says it's a nasty place full of enemies. And it is very clearly evil. It is super ominous looking. It is green because, as you know, all evil things have a green, shiny light on them.
I do like green. Yeah, green for evil, for
It's
sure.
kind of fun. I always see green and purple as the villain colors, which is ironic because I love green and purple together.
I do too.
So he takes them to the secret stair, and I'm getting annoyed because Sam starts climbing first. And I'm like, Sam, you heard him say the secret stair. What are you doing? But Frodo starts feeling a pull towards the Dead City, and he starts going over. He's wobbling around, and Sam and Gollum have to pull him back. And this crazy, it seems like an explosion is about to happen, but it turns out to be a beacon, and Gandalf can even see it from Gondor, and we see all these people seeing it, and basically, I don't know exactly what's happening. I guess the orcs are coming out of the Dead City.
Yeah, that's the army leaving, yeah.
So the hobbits and Gollum hide, and another terrible scream moment from this giant dragon that the Lord of the Nazgul is on. It makes this awful sound. I pulled out my headphones. It was that bad.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty bad.
It was rough. And then they start marching out.
How about those stairs, though? Because that wasn't really stairs. They're going to be climbing so hard.
I wasn't focusing as much on the stairs as I was focusing on how dirty their feet are.
More foot shots. I just remember the first time I saw this and being like, I was picturing just like some nice winding stairs, a staircase. No, these are they're not stairs.
There were kind of stairs etched into it, but there was a lot of climbing for sure. And then Gandalf, meanwhile, tells Pippin that he has a task that he cannot fail. And Pippin runs off, and these next scenes are cut together as well. So at one point we see the orcs and the orcai quietly trying to take over. But you said the name of the city, which I keep on blocking out that name.
Osgiliath. So that's where at the end of the second movie where Frodo and Sam were. So if they had kept Frodo and Sam there, yeah, they would have been pretty bad. Yeah.
Okay, so then Faramir's kind of leading his soldiers and they hide. So they ambush the orcs as they come ashore. And then meanwhile, we see Pippin. He's climbing a tower and it looks like there's a pyre at the top of the tower. And we have this moment where it's like, will he get to do it? He's a little short, but he ends up grabbing the fire, grabbing the oil, and he lights this pyre. And there are these guys who are supposed to be keeping watch of it. And they're like, oops, uh-oh. And then we see all of these pyres being lit across the nation. Yeah.
What a terrible job. You have to like ride out there every day.
Yeah. So there's actually one point where Gandalf sees it in the distance and I wrote, it seems so far away, but it turns out it was a different pyre because I thought that that was the one that he sent Pippin to. And I was like, how do you expect him to get all the way over there? But no, there's many pyres. So they're all being lit all the way down to Rohan where Aragorn sees it. And at first I just wrote down like cute guy sees it, but then we see him up close and it's like, oh, it's Aragorn.
Cute guy sees it. Also, I love this method of sending mail, you know?
Yeah, it's cute.
Definitely a very innovative way to get some messages across the nation.
That's got to be stressful, though, because there's some that were like in the middle of nowhere. How are they lighting those?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's a terrible job to have to ride out there every day. Some of them were in the snow.
And also, how are they refilling those? They got to get all new straw for that now?
I mean, my assumption is they very rarely get lit, which is why it's also like, obviously a very important job because when they need to be lit, they got to be lit fast. But like, they'd be lucky if they do their job ever.
Yeah, once a lifetime, maybe.
Yeah.
So then Aragorn runs up to the, I don't know, castle, whatever it is, and he tells Theoden that Gondor calls for aid. And for a moment, we're not sure what Theoden is going to say. But then he says, and Rohan will answer. And that is where we cut mid-scene. So we have no idea what's going to happen next, except that we probably know that Rohan is going to answer.
I mean, they're like readying the horses and stuff. They're like getting ready to go. But I figured this was a nice little button on the scene.
It was a cool end, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I can say we've met Denithor, and I hate him already.
Yeah, Denithor is our new character in this section. And, well, okay, let's see. So we've met Boromir and Faramir. Initially, when meeting those characters,
we
didn't like either of them. But I would say Boromir got his redemption in death. Faramir has been redeemed.
Did you say in a previous episode that you thought Faramir was cute, or did I just decide that you probably think he's cute?
I do think he's cute, but actually there was one time I got a haircut that was tragic and I kept sending pictures of him and being like, this is what it looks like.
No. I don't know. I just feel like anybody you have a crush on is either pure evil or pure good. And I'm just assuming that since he's already redeemed himself, that he's probably good if you have a crush on him.
I didn't say that though. I think you've just decided this in your head. I never said that. I do think he is cute,
You know, I think in my head, I just think that I know your type. So I always just assume like, oh, Leah thinks this character is cute. And I feel like I'm wrong more than half the time.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I've just decided.
We know that Aragorn is definitely my boo in this film. Absolutely. Him and Arwen, too.
I was just going to say, and Arwen, I know you love her.
I had such a crush on her when I was younger, and I felt like I wanted to see like every film she was in. But to be honest, her body of work is not terribly impressive after this film. I don't even know anything else
You just unlocked a core memory for me. I remember when I was younger, I saw a movie with her in it, and it was called That Thing You Do. And
Sounds like a rom-com.
No.
Sounds like just my type of movie.
It actually was your type of movie. I could be wrong remembering this because it was so long ago, and I should probably look it up before I say it online publicly. But I think it was very similar to Almost Famous. Like, I think she was following around a music group, but she's in a relationship with the main guy, and there's like problems. So it's one of those movies where they're becoming famous and the relationship is in danger or something like that, which I feel like does seem like your kind of movie.
That actually, yeah, that does does sound like my type of movie. Also, I might completely be making this up and saying all the wrong names, but I think she was in this movie Jersey Girl, which I believe was with Ben Affleck, where Ben Affleck has like a daughter that he didn't know he had and he's raising her.
Just talking about random
away
movies
from the films
that we don't even remember.
And that we're definitely not going to watch on this podcast because they are not geeky enough.
They're not geeky enough for us.
Back to the point I was trying to make about Faramir and Boromir is that when we first met those characters,
that's what
they
we were
definitely
about.
A little sus. Yeah, I remember it somehow. I don't even know how. Talking about Arwen. Getting back to the point. They were sus characters when we first met them, and they did redeem themselves. Faramir for sure redeemed himself because at this point, if any of his men survive and then report back to his father that he let the ring go, his life is forfeit, and he's willing to do that. So he's redeemed. Yeah. Boromir's redeemed. Denithor, we don't really like Denithor at the moment. Any chance of redemption? What do you think?
I feel like he's just going to be another character that like gets redeemed as he's dying. So he's going to be dying and Aragorn's going to be looking over him and he's going to be like, you're going to make a good king. And then he's just going to die. I'm sure that's what's going to happen. It just feels very predictable. I could be wrong, but it just feels like that's how it's going to be.
Maybe.
Like he's going to fight it all the way to his death. And then he's going to be like, oh, just kidding. You're going to be good. And then dies.
It's what happened with the rest of his family. So I guess it's possible.
Yeah. That just seems to be like the Niramir, Faramir, wherever you are, Amir way, you know?
Yeah, that's just the way that they are.
But before we go, I want to talk really quickly about the stairs because I want to give you my predictions about what's going to happen there.
Because the stairs to the tunnels. Yeah, let's talk about that.
I mean, it seems like we have this setup that we're going to meet her, the infamous her, even though Sam knows what's going to happen. But for some reason, he is just dumb enough to let it happen. But maybe he just feels like this is like a way for Frodo to see that Smeagol is actually not looking at their best interest right now. Yeah. So I think we're going to get a little battle with her. I don't know what she is, but it sounds like she might be like I'm imagining like the Alaskan bullworm from SpongeBob, which is just like basically a giant worm.
Yeah, I remember that.
There's a lot of worm imagery in this movie though. Like the first scene started with a worm. We've got Worm Tongue. Is that what his name was?
Grimma. Yeah, Grimma Worm Tongue.
So I'm just imagining this just giant Alaskan bullworm just coming after them.
I'm also curious of how much Sam heard of that conversation. I'm not 100% sure if he knows that her is waiting in the tunnel for them or anything like that. But I think at this point, he just thinks that as long as he is there, as long as he's protecting Frodo and keeping watch, he'll be fine. Yeah.
Well, I wonder if Gollum is going to die here. Maybe he will. I mean, they're close enough to Mordor that I feel like they can make the rest of the journey without him. And I do think that Gollum is going to die at some point before they make it there. And I feel like he's also going to have a little redemption moment where Gollum, like the Gollum version of himself, is gone and Smeagol can die peacefully knowing that the ring is going to be destroyed or something like that. So that's my prediction.
Yeah, something like that. I like it.
Do you have any predictions? I know you've never seen
my prediction. Yeah, I've never seen them. Imagine I just like predictions and I just say exactly what's going to happen.
I would be so mad at you.
I like the predictions you've made though. I think they're insightful.
Ooh, thank you. Welcome. I'm trying my best here. I keep on saying this and then there keeps on being twists and turns, but it seems like it's just pretty straightforward from here on. This is the last time I'm going to say it, but I don't think there's going to be any more plot twists. I think this is it.
I feel like even in these films, there's not really like a ton of plot twists. There's just like more building, world building and story building and stuff like that, which I think does make it hard to predict.
I'm very curious to read the books now that, when I finish the movie, obviously, because I do want to learn a little bit more about the backstory that you've been sharing with me. But also, I just feel like it's easier to remember the world building when I'm reading it rather than seeing it. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that'll probably be something I do after this.
I feel like I need to reread them too. I reread the first one pretty recently, but the other two I'm a bit less versed in.
Right. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. So be sure to come back next Thursday for the next one. And don't forget to rate us.
Yeah. 5 stars though.
5 stars if you feel like we've been doing a good job.
If you don't like the podcast, thank you so much for being here.
If you don't love the podcast, you don't even have to rate it. But Absolutely if you do love the podcast, please consider giving us a rating. We really enjoy making it and we would love for more people to be able to find it and join the community. And we have been loving the response that we have gotten from you guys so far. We love correcting Leah. We love it.
Yeah,
and
love it
really,
so much.
anytime, even if you just feel like she is pronouncing something slightly wrong, feel free to tell us, because I just live for it. That's what I love.
Before we even started the podcast, Kelly said, you know, it would be so great if people started correcting you. And I was like, wow, okay. You want people to think I'm wrong? Well, just wait till we get to Star Wars, because I feel like I'm way less versed on that.
Oh yeah, that's another huge franchise that I have not seen that we will have to eventually watch.
Eventually, we got to get to that one for sure.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. But anyway, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to the It's All Geek to Me podcast, hosted by Leah and Kelly. Make sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. You can also find us on Twitter at All Geek Podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. See you next week.